From now on, Mom, the cooking and laundry are all on you. The words hit me harder than I expected. I was sitting in the sunroom, sunlight warm on my face, my hands wrapped around a delicate cup of Earl Grey. It was supposed to be my first peaceful morning of retirement. No rush hour traffic. No lesson plans. Just quiet. Then a greasy dish rag came flying across the room and landed squarely in my lap, leaving a dark stain on my favorite beige cardigan. "Excuse me," I said, my voice steady but low. "You heard me," my daughter-in-law, Heather, said, arms folded, chin lifted in that way she had when she felt triumphant. "You're retired now, Grace. You've got all this free time, and you're living here rent-free. The least you can do is help out." I placed my teacup on its saucer, the porcelain clinking lightly. The rag smelled of old bacon grease and dish soap. "Heather," I began, but before I could say more, my son appeared from the hallway, buttoning the cuffs of his crisp shirt. "Come on, Heather, don't talk to my mom like that," he said, and for a fleeting moment, I felt a rush of gratitude. But then, as always, came the "but." "But she's not wrong," Ethan continued, glancing at me with that calm, managerial smile he used on his employees. "Mom, you know how expensive everything's gotten. We're under a lot of pressure. You helping out around the house isn't unreasonable." For a moment, I just looked at him, the man I had once carried on my hip through every cold and fever, the boy I had stayed up nights tutoring so he could win his first scholarship. The man I had given my savings to when he and Heather bought this very house. "I understand," I said quietly, setting the rag on the table. "You two go on to work. I'll handle things here." Heather's lips curved into a satisfied smirk as she slung her designer purse over her shoulder. "Glad we're on the same page," she said, clicking away in her heels. Ethan followed, pausing at the door. "Mom," he said, "Heather likes the floors mopped every other day. Just try to keep things neat, okay?" The door shut behind them with a dull thud. Silence filled the house. I looked around the spotless living room that wasn't really mine, past the family photo on the wall, Ethan, 10 years old, his little arms looped around my neck, both of us grinning like the world was good and simple. I walked into the kitchen. The sink was piled high with greasy plates. The trash overflowed. I rolled up my sleeves and began washing. The water was hot. My tears were hotter. I'd worked hard my whole life as a teacher. After long days in the classroom, I'd still come home and cook for them, clean for them, help with their errands. And every time Heather critiqued my food or muttered about old-fashioned habits, I'd swallowed it. Because family mattered. Because I thought love and patience would be enough. But now I knew better. When the last plate was clean, I dried my hands, walked to my room, the small one they called Mom's space, and pulled out the old navy suitcase from under the bed. The one my late husband, Robert, and I had taken on our last trip together. I could almost hear his voice again, "Grace, don't depend on anyone completely. Even love changes with time." He'd been gone 5 years, but his wisdom hadn't aged a day. I folded my clothes neatly, tucked in a few photo albums, a well-worn Bible, and the gold watch Robert had left me. From under my pillow, I retrieved a thick envelope, cash I'd been quietly saving from my pension. Enough to start over. On the dining table, I left a short note. "Don't worry about me. I'm going to find my own worth." Then I rolled my suitcase to the curb and hailed a cab. "Where to, ma'am?" the driver asked cheerfully. I hesitated. Where to, indeed? The only home I'd known these past 2 years had just closed its doors to me. "Take me downtown," I said finally. We passed the school where I'd taught for nearly 4 decades, the farmer's market where Robert and I used to shop, the park where we'd fed ducks on Sunday afternoons. Everything looked familiar, and yet, for the first time, I realized I had nowhere to belong. I checked into a modest downtown hotel. The room was small but clean, the sheets crisp. Sitting by the window, I opened the secret compartment in my suitcase. Inside were property deeds, bank statements, and stock certificates, assets I'd kept separate ever since Robert's passing. He'd insisted I invest his life insurance quietly, and I had. Now, that foresight was my salvation. I owned a small condo in Brookside Heights, a cozy 2-bedroom unit currently rented out. There was also a little commercial property leased to a corner store, plus mutual funds that paid enough to live comfortably. I smiled faintly. Robert had been right all along. I called my old friend, Margaret, a lawyer who'd worked with Robert for years. "Margaret, it's Grace," I said. My voice was steady, almost serene. "I've moved out of Ethan's house." Margaret swore under her breath. "Those ungrateful kids." "Don't you worry, honey. I'll have your condo ready. The tenant's lease is up next week. You can move in as soon as you want." "Thank you, Margaret. And, don't tell Ethan yet. Let him wonder." After hanging up, I took the longest shower I'd had in months, letting the hot water wash away years of exhaustion. When I looked at my reflection in the mirror, I saw a woman reborn, wrinkled, yes, but radiant. Alive. That evening, I ordered steak and tiramisu in the hotel restaurant. My phone rang mid-meal. "Ethan." "Mom? Where are you? Why did you leave a note like that?" His voice was taut, impatient. "I'm staying somewhere else," I said calmly. "You and Heather will need to manage for a while." "Mom, don't be dramatic. Heather didn't mean anything by it. Just come back. You don't have to do everything, okay? We'll compromise." I could picture his face, annoyed, not worried. A man inconvenienced, not a son heartbroken. "Ethan," I said, my tone even, my decision final, "I raised you for 35 years. I gave you everything I had. But I will not be treated like your maid." "Mom, come on." "That won't be necessary," I interrupted. And hung up. The steak tasted better after that. Later, as the city lights glowed outside my window, I thought about the life ahead, the condo, the peace, the quiet mornings that would truly be mine. I imagined Ethan and Heather standing in that kitchen tonight, staring at the dishes, wondering what to do without me. For once, it wasn't my problem. When I woke the next morning, the sunlight streaming through the curtains felt different, soft, golden, forgiving. My phone was full of missed calls and text messages. "Mom, stop this. Come home. You're making things difficult." I smiled. Then I called Margaret. "Let's go see that condo," I said. Half an hour later, she pulled up in her little blue car and hugged me fiercely. Brookside Heights was bright and peaceful, with trimmed hedges and quiet walkways. When I stepped inside my condo, sunlight poured across the hardwood floors, warm and welcoming. For the first time in years, I felt home. "Here it is, Unit 502, Margaret said, slipping a silver key into the lock. "You remember, right? You bought it right after Robert passed." "On a whim," you said. The door swung open, and the faint scent of lemon cleaner floated out. Warm light poured through the sliding glass doors, spilling over polished floors and soft beige walls. The place was spotless. A young couple had just moved out that morning, and they'd even hired a cleaning service. "They left the furniture," Margaret said, stepping aside so I could take it all in. "You could move in right now if you wanted." I walked slowly through the apartment, my fingertips brushing across the smooth dining table, the arm of a brand new sofa. Everything gleamed, bright, open, and filled with air. The master bedroom held a queen-sized bed, the second room was set up as a small office, and the kitchen was fully stocked with modern appliances. From the balcony, I could see the complex's central garden, a lush space where children chased each other around the fountain while retirees sipped coffee under umbrellas. Do you like it? Margaret asked, leaning against the doorframe. I nodded, unable to find words. The lump in my throat was sharp and sudden. It's beautiful, I managed. She smiled faintly. The tenants always paid on time. Here. She pulled a folder from her leather bag. After taxes and management fees, you've been clearing about $1,500 a month. These are the records from the past 5 years. I took the folder but didn't open it. I trust you, I said simply. Margaret studied me, her sharp green eyes softening. You're really moving in today. Just like that. I've got nowhere else to go, I said with a quiet laugh. Besides, it's time I live in something that's mine. Not even going to wait for Ethan to come crawling back with an apology, she teased. I smiled thinly. He won't. In his mind, I'm just a stubborn old woman throwing a fit. He'll wait a few days, and when I don't show up, he'll tell himself I'll be back when I run out of money. Margaret sighed. I'll call a moving service for you. No need, I said, shaking my head. It's just one suitcase. That's all I brought from their house. Nothing else mattered enough to pack. She didn't argue. She just drove me back to the hotel to collect my things. The ride was quiet until she asked, when are you going to tell Ethan the truth? What truth? I said, though I already knew. That you're not broke, she replied. That you've got this condo, savings, investments, that you don't need him or Heather. He probably thinks you're living off scraps. I stared out the window, watching the traffic blur past. Let him think that for a while, I said finally. He never imagined his mother might actually stand on her own 2 feet. Back at the hotel, I picked up my single suitcase. Just as we were walking out, my phone rang. An unknown number. Hello? Mom, Ethan's voice came through, strained and sharp. Why haven't you been answering? Do you know how worried Heather and I are? I'm fine, I said evenly. You don't need to worry. Where are you? I'm coming to get you. That won't be necessary, I said, glancing at Margaret, who gave me a small nod. I'm staying with a friend. A friend? His tone was suspicious, almost incredulous. You have other friends in this city. Mom, stop this. Come home. Heather said you don't have to do all the housework anymore. We'll compromise. A tired laugh escaped me. Ethan, I'm 62 years old. I've earned the right to live my own life. You and Heather take care of yourselves. Mom. But I hung up. Margaret looked over, her brow furrowed. You okay? I'm fine, I said, exhaling slowly. Let's go home. That word, home, felt strange on my tongue. For nearly 4 decades, home had always been wherever someone else needed me to be. A dorm room near the school where I taught. A company apartment when Robert worked late. A cramped bedroom in my son's house. For the first time in my life, home was wherever I decided. The property manager at Brookside Gardens, a cheerful man named Tim, was more than happy to help. When he found out I was the owner, he nearly tripped over himself getting the paperwork done. Margaret stayed with me the rest of the day, helping stock the kitchen and unpack groceries. Before leaving, she hugged me tightly. Call me anytime, she said. And don't go soft on that boy. He needs to learn what it's like to stand without leaning on you. After she left, I stood in the quiet living room, sunlight stretching across the floor like a welcome mat. Yesterday, I had been washing dishes in someone else's kitchen. Tonight, I had a new beginning. I unpacked the few clothes I owned and placed a single photo album on the nightstand. Its pages were yellowed, edges soft from years of being handled. Ethan's childhood smiled back at me, his first steps, his first backpack, his first heartbreak. The last photo was of the 3 of us, Robert, thin but smiling, his arm draped around both of us. His eyes seemed to say, "Take care of yourself, Grace." I tucked the photo into a frame beside my bed, then pulled out the manila envelope from my suitcase. Inside were property deeds, investment documents, and account statements, 3 mutual funds totaling more than $600,000, a commercial property lease that paid $48,000 a year, and my pension. My monthly income was over $15,000. More than triple what Ethan assumed I lived on. Robert had been right. Always keep a safety net. That night, I made a simple vegetable soup and ate it by the balcony doors, the city lights flickering below like quiet stars. My phone was off. I didn't want their voices intruding on this fragile peace. When I finally lay in bed, sleep came slowly, interrupted by old memories, Ethan's fevers, his college tuition, the sacrifices that had felt worth it at the time. Then, the phone buzzed faintly on the nightstand. A single text slipped through before it shut down again. "Mom, Heather's pregnant. Are you really going to let your grandchild be born without a grandmother?" I stared at the message, heart thudding. Pregnant? The timing was too convenient. I didn't respond. Instead, I called Margaret. "Can you look into something for me?" Morning came softly, sunlight spilling through the blinds. I stretched, feeling the quiet freedom in my chest. I made coffee and toast, sat on the balcony, and watched the neighbors walk their dogs. My phone showed 3 new messages, all from Ethan. "Mom, Heather's really pregnant. It's been 2 months. I'm sending you the report." Attached was a blurry ultrasound labeled early intrauterine pregnancy. Dated the same day I left. I sipped my coffee slowly. The bitterness cleared my thoughts. If Heather had really been pregnant, would she have been throwing rags and shouting the morning before? Something didn't add up. The doorbell rang. Through the peephole, I saw Margaret holding a paper bag. "Morning," she said, breezing in. "Brought you breakfast. Figured you wouldn't bother cooking yet." "What's going on?" I asked, taking the oatmeal container. "2 things," she said, pulling out a folder. "First, I checked. Heather did visit a women's clinic yesterday, but the diagnosis wasn't pregnancy, it was an irregular cycle." My hand froze midair, the oatmeal spoon trembling. I had suspected it, but hearing it confirmed still chilled me. "They lied," I whispered. "They lied to guilt you into coming back," she said firmly. "And second," Margaret handed me a business card. "You've got an appointment with an attorney this afternoon. There's something new about Robert's estate. He set up a trust one didn't know about until I dug into some records." "A trust?" I frowned. "He never told me anything about that." Margaret hesitated. "You'll want to hear it from the lawyer." After she left, I tried to keep busy, washed dishes, rearranged a shelf, took a walk around the complex. When I returned, the doorbell rang again. The property manager stood there holding a large bouquet of lilies and carnations. "These were just delivered for you, Mrs. Whitmore," he said. I took them silently. A note was tucked between the stems. "Mom, we're sorry. Please forgive us. Love, Ethan and Heather." The handwriting was unmistakably Ethan's. Heather's name was scrawled awkwardly beside it. I set the bouquet on the table without looking for a vase. By 3 o'clock, I was sitting across from a lawyer named Richard Peterson, a calm man in his 50s with gold-rimmed glasses. "Mrs. Whitmore," he said, opening a file. "I've reviewed your late husband's estate. There's something you should know. Mr. Whitmore established a trust fund before his passing. You and your son are listed as beneficiaries." "A trust?" I asked, stunned. "How much?" "As of today, approximately $500,000, he said. "It generates about $2,000 a month in income. But there's a stipulation: If your son is ever deemed neglectful or unkind toward you, you have the legal right to revoke his beneficiary status. For a long moment, I said nothing. Robert's voice echoed faintly in my mind, steady, practical, protective. Don't ever let anyone forget your worth, Grace. I looked down at the papers, my hand trembling slightly. Then it seems, I said quietly, my husband knew our son better than I did. When Margaret handed me the folder across the lawyer's desk, I didn't think much of it. She'd been managing my late husband's estate for years. But when she said, "It's strange, you've never touched this money in 5 years," I froze. "What money?" I asked, my voice thin. "The trust Robert left you," she said softly. $500,000. It's been generating about $2,000 a month in interest. But there's no record of any withdrawals under your name. My stomach dropped. That's impossible. I never received a penny. I flipped through the papers with trembling fingers until I found the receiving account number, and my heart stopped. It wasn't mine. "Mr. Peterson," I whispered, turning to the estate lawyer beside her. "This isn't my account." He frowned, adjusting his glasses. "You're right. This account was temporary, designated under a Mr. Ethan Whitmore. It was supposed to transfer to your name 5 years ago." The room spun. After Robert died, Ethan handled all the finances. I trusted him completely. I gave him power of attorney. My voice came out hoarse. "Can you check who controls this account now?" "Of course," Peterson said. I signed the authorization with a shaking hand. 10 long minutes later, after a quiet phone call to the bank, he looked up. "The account is still active," he said carefully. "And the current holder is Ethan Whitmore." My vision blurred. "My son," I whispered. I sank into the chair, unable to breathe. Ethan had been secretly pocketing every dollar of the trust Robert left me, 5 years of deceit, while letting me scrub floors and wash dishes in his house, believing I was a burden he had to feed. "Mrs. Whitmore," Peterson said gently, "are you all right?" I steadied myself. "I'm fine. But I want to sue him. I want every cent back." He hesitated. "It's a family matter. I'd advise mediation first." "Mediation?" I gave a cold laugh. "He stole his mother's retirement. What is there to mediate?" Outside, the sun glared off the courthouse windows. I stood on the sidewalk, my legs unsteady. My husband's trust fund. My son's lies. Heather's fake pregnancy. They collided in my chest like shrapnel. I called Margaret. "He stole the money, Margaret. Every dollar Robert left for me." By the time she arrived at my condo, I was sitting on the balcony, staring into nothing. She hugged me tightly, the same way she had the day Robert died. "Grace," she said fiercely, "we're going to the bank. Right now." At the bank, the manager printed the transaction history. "Every month, exactly $1,800 withdrawn," he said, pointing at the screen. "All signed by Ethan Whitmore. He used the power of attorney you granted." I gripped the table. "I signed that to let him manage Robert's estate. I never imagined." "Can you freeze the account?" Margaret demanded. "Not without a court order," the manager said apologetically. Outside, Margaret was fuming. "He needs to pay. Now." "I want to talk to him first," I said quietly. "Talk?" "Grace, he's been stealing from you for years. I just want to hear what he says." That night, I sent a single text. "Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the entrance of Brookside Gardens. Come alone." He replied instantly. "Mom, you're at Brookside. That place costs a fortune. How are you affording it?" I didn't answer. "Don't tell Heather." Then I powered my phone off. Sleep wouldn't come. My mind was a carousel of memories: Ethan's first steps, his college graduation, his wedding toast where he'd called me the best mother in the world. Now, all of that felt like a cruel joke. By morning, I'd aged 10 years. I waited by the gate as the clock struck 9:30. Ethan arrived early, wearing the navy shirt I'd bought him last Christmas. "Mom," he said, his tone forced and light. "You live here. This place is expensive. Where'd you get the money?" "I'm not renting," I said evenly. "This is my condo." He blinked. "Since when do you have a condo?" "I bought it 5 years ago. With Robert's life insurance money. The same year you helped me manage the trust fund." The color drained from his face. What trust fund?" "The $500,000 your father left for me," I said, staring straight at him. "You've been stealing it for 5 years." He swallowed hard, eyes darting away. "Mom, I can explain." "Explain how you watched your mother live like a beggar while you pocketed her money." His shoulders slumped. "It was Heather," he said quickly. "She convinced me to invest it, for our future." I swear, I didn't mean. I stepped back. A man in his 30s blaming his wife for theft. Impressive. "Mom, please. Most of it's tied up in an investment. I can't get it out right now." "What investment?" "In Heather's cousin's startup. It's supposed to give 20% annual returns." The words hit like thunder. "A Ponzi scheme," I whispered. "You threw away my husband's legacy." "I'll fix it," he said desperately. "You have 1 week," I said. "Return every dollar, or I'll see you in court." "Mom, you can't do this. I'm your son. When you were stealing from me, did that stop you?" I asked, my voice sharp. His expression twisted. "Dad left it for both of us. Why should you get all of it?" For a moment, I couldn't speak. The trust was clear. "You inherit only if you're a good son to me. Consider that condition revoked." As I turned to leave, he shouted after me, "You'll regret this. You're old and alone, you'll die in that condo and no one will care." The doorman looked at me with concern as I entered. "Everything all right, Mrs. Whitmore?" "Yes," I said quietly. "From now on, don't let that man in." Back inside, I crumpled onto the sofa and wept. When the phone rang, I wiped my tears. "Mrs. Whitmore," Peterson's voice said, "I found something. Robert's trust originally gave Ethan 30%, but he altered the document 5 years ago. He forged your signature." I went still. "That's a felony." "Yes. If you press charges, he could face prison." I looked out the window, children playing in the courtyard below. Ethan used to look just like them, bright-eyed, innocent, full of dreams. What had money turned him into? "Mr. Peterson," I said, "steady now. File the lawsuit." Not long after, my phone rang again. "Heather." "Grace," she sobbed, "please don't do this. Ethan's your only son." "When you both lied to me," I said, "did you ever think this day would come?" "We were wrong. The money's invested, but we'll pay it back. We'll sign an IOU." "Invested in what?" "My cousin's medical project. It's real, 20% return." "Stop it," I cut in. "You're educated, Heather. You know that's a scam." Her tone shifted, hard and cold. "If you take this to court, we'll say you gave Ethan the money as a gift. Who'll believe you over your son? You're just an old woman." I hung up. That night, Margaret came over with lasagna. When I told her everything, she nearly threw the dish. "They're monsters. Tomorrow, we're filing immediately." "Maybe," I said softly, "I should give them one more chance." Grace, she snapped. He stole from you. He threatened you. That good boy is gone. I stared at the simmering sauce. She was right. Tomorrow, we'd go to court. The courthouse smelled of cold marble and disinfectant. I sat with Margaret and Peterson, my palms clammy. At 9 sharp, Ethan and Heather arrived. He was in a suit, she wore a loose dress, her belly slightly round. Maybe this time she really was pregnant. Mom, Ethan said, flashing a strained smile. Let's not make a scene. We're family. Peterson stepped forward. Mr. Whitmore, on behalf of Mrs. Whitmore, we are suing for misappropriation of trust assets. Ethan's face darkened. You're really doing this? Suing your son? You made the choice for me, I said. Everyone, he shouted suddenly. My mother is suing me, while my wife is pregnant. Heather's eyes filled with fake tears. Grace, do you want your grandchild born into debt? I looked at her. Yesterday you called the money a gift. Today you're the victim. Which is it? She froze. Ethan, I said, I'll drop this if you return the money right now. I can't, he hissed. It's gone. But if you push me, I'll push back. He opened a folder and tossed papers onto the table. Here's a bill for your rent, food, and utilities from the 5 years you lived with us. $320,000. Pay up. I stared at the paper, shaking. Brenda's face reddened with fury. You worked her like a servant, and now you want payment. Ethan folded his arms. She lived under my roof. Fair's fair. I stood slowly. Fine. Let's settle everything. I pulled out a notepad. 5 years of cooking, 3 meals a day, market rate $50 a meal. That's $270,000. House cleaning twice a week, $20,000 a year. Laundry and ironing, another $60,000. That's $430,000 total. Subtract your $320,000, and you still owe me $110,000, plus the $500,000 you stole. Peterson nodded approvingly. Those rates are entirely reasonable. Ethan's jaw clenched. This is blackmail. No, I said. This is justice. Moments later, a clerk appeared. The judge will see you now. The mediator was a calm woman in her 50s. She listened quietly, then said, Mr. Whitmore, forging your mother's signature and altering a trust document is a serious offense. You could face prison. Heather panicked. We'll pay it back. Just not all at once. Fine, I said. Use your house as collateral. No way, Ethan barked. Then I'll see you in court. Heather grabbed his arm. We'll sign. I'd rather sell the house than visit you in prison. Under the judge's supervision, Ethan signed the repayment agreement. He admitted to taking the $500,000 and agreed to repay it within 5 years, secured by their home. As we left the courthouse, he turned to me, his face gray. Are you satisfied now? No, I said quietly. I'd be satisfied if my son were still a decent man. He sneered. You had that condo all along. You just wanted to test me. I met his eyes. No, Ethan. I wanted to believe in you. That's all. Back home, I collapsed on the sofa, drained. I had won, but it didn't feel like victory. Margaret arrived later with a warm smile. Good news. Lincoln Community College wants you to teach a calligraphy class. They'd love to have you. I smiled faintly. Maybe it's time. The next morning, sunlight filled the room. I brewed tea and spread out my old brushes. As I practiced, the strokes grew steady and sure again. Then my phone rang. Mrs. Whitmore, a man's voice said. "This is Mark Evans, principal at Lincoln Elementary. We heard you've retired. We'd love for you to mentor our young teachers." I looked out at the garden below, children laughing in the morning light. "Thank you, Mr. Evans," I said, smiling for the first time in weeks. "I'd love to." When I arrived at the school gates, the past 5 years fell away. Laughter, sunlight, the smell of chalk, all of it felt like coming home. Inside, young teachers greeted me with wide eyes and hopeful smiles. "Mrs. Whitmore," one said shyly, "we've heard so much about you." And for the first time in years, I felt like myself again, not someone's servant, not a victim, but a woman with her own name, her own home, and her own beginning. At 62, life wasn't over. It was just getting started. Grace Whitmore sat across from the financial advisor's desk, her fingers clasped tightly together. The late morning sun slanted through the blinds, striping the documents laid before her in bands of light and shadow. "Mrs. Whitmore," said Mr. Peterson, sliding a statement across the polished wood, "there's something you should see. Your husband's trust has been active this entire time." Grace frowned. "Active? That can't be. My husband's estate was settled 5 years ago." He adjusted his glasses. "According to these records, you were to receive $2,000 every month from the $500,000 trust your husband left for you. But strangely, there are no deposits into your personal account." For a second, Grace thought she'd misheard him. "That's not possible," she whispered. "I never received a penny." Mr. Peterson tapped the page gently. "The transfers went to a different account. See this number here? It doesn't match yours." Grace leaned closer. Her heart thudded in her chest. "That isn't my bank. Who authorized this?" "According to the file," Mr. Peterson said, his tone growing uneasy, "the temporary account was established by a Mr. Ethan Whitmore. Your son. It was supposed to be transferred to your name after your husband's passing." Her hands began to tremble. After Robert died, Ethan had offered to handle the estate paperwork. He'd told her not to worry, that he'd take care of everything. In her grief, she had trusted him implicitly. "Mr. Peterson," she said hoarsely, "can you find out who's controlling that account right now?" "Of course. I'll need your authorization first." Grace signed the form without hesitation. Mr. Peterson made a call, his voice low and professional. 10 minutes later, he looked up, his expression grave. "The current holder of the account is Ethan Whitmore." Grace felt the air leave her lungs. The room spun slightly, and she sank back into the chair. Her son, the boy she had raised alone after Robert's heart attack, had been stealing from her all this time. "Mrs. Whitmore, are you all right?" She nodded numbly, though her hands were cold. "I'm fine," she said, though the words came out hollow. "Mr. Peterson, I want to take legal action. I want every cent back." He hesitated. "I understand, but since this involves family, it may be best to attempt mediation first." Grace gave a bitter laugh. "He stole from his own mother. What is there to mediate?" Outside, the sunlight was too bright. She stood on the sidewalk, her mind buzzing. 5 years of lies. 5 years of scraping by on her pension while Ethan lived comfortably, telling her money was tight. She pulled out her phone and called Margaret Hayes. "Margaret," she said, her voice trembling, "Ethan's been taking Robert's trust fund. The entire thing." By the time Margaret arrived at Grace's condo, Grace was sitting on the balcony, staring at nothing. "Oh, Grace," Margaret said softly, gathering her into a hug. "We'll fix this. Don't you worry." Grace nodded faintly, still in shock. Together they examined the documents from Mr. Peterson. The reality grew darker with every page. "He forged your authorization," Margaret muttered, jaw tightening. "That's fraud, $500,000, and not a single cent to you. And he made me feel like a burden, Grace said with a bitter smile. He told me I should be grateful to live with them after my savings ran out. Meanwhile, he was living off my money. Margaret stood abruptly. We're going to the bank. The two women drove to the branch managing the trust. After verifying Grace's identity, the manager retrieved the account history. For the past 5 years, he said, $1,800 has been withdrawn monthly. Each transaction signed by Mr. Ethan Whitmore, using the power of attorney you granted him. Grace's heart sank. That document, she remembered signing it after Robert's funeral, too overwhelmed to read the fine print. She had handed Ethan full control. Can you freeze the account? Margaret asked. I'm afraid you'll need a court order, the manager replied. As they left, Margaret was seething. We'll get that order. I'll file the complaint myself. Wait, Grace said quietly. I need to talk to him first. Margaret looked at her as if she'd lost her mind. Talk. Grace, he stole $500,000. I just need to hear what he has to say, Grace murmured. He's my son. That night, Grace sent a single text. Meet me tomorrow at 10 a.m. at the entrance to Maplewood Estates. Come alone. Ethan replied almost immediately. Mom, you live there. The rent's ridiculous. How can you afford it? She ignored the question. Don't tell Heather. Just come. The next morning, Grace stood by the gate of her condo building. Ethan arrived early, wearing the navy shirt she'd given him last Christmas. Mom, he said with forced cheer, what's going on? Why didn't you tell me you moved here? You can't afford this place. I'm not renting, she said evenly. I own it. Bought it 5 years ago, with money from your father's insurance. Right after you helped me handle the trust fund. Color drained from his face. What do you mean? You know exactly what I mean, Grace said, her voice trembling but steady. For 5 years, you took every dollar from the trust your father left for me. While I cooked your meals and cleaned your house, you stole my independence. He grabbed her hand. Mom, please, listen. It wasn't like that. Heather said we could invest the money, make more for you. Don't you dare blame her, Grace said sharply, pulling her hand away. This was your responsibility. You betrayed me. It's gone, Ethan whispered. The money, it's tied up in an investment. Heather's cousin's startup. It's legitimate. Grace's stomach dropped. A startup? What kind? He looked away. A medical tech company. It's supposed to pay 20% a year. Grace almost laughed. A Ponzi scheme, then. You handed them everything. He said nothing. I'm giving you 1 week, she said. Return every cent. Or I'll see you in court. He stepped forward, desperate. You can't. I'm your son. You'd really watch me go to jail. When you were stealing from me, Grace said, her voice breaking, did you think about that? That money was half mine anyway, he shouted suddenly. Dad meant it for both of us. No, Grace said coldly. The trust was clear, you inherit only if you're a good son. And right now, you're nothing but a thief. She turned and walked away as he shouted after her, you'll regret this. Without me, you'll die alone. Grace didn't look back. At home, she collapsed onto the couch, trembling. Her phone rang, Mr. Peterson again. Mrs. Whitmore, I've uncovered something disturbing. Your husband's original trust had 3 conditions for Ethan's inheritance: your consent, financial stability, and filial conduct. 5 years ago, those clauses were altered, and your signature was forged. Grace closed her eyes. So he didn't just steal. He broke the law. Yes, Mr. Peterson said quietly. That's forgery and embezzlement. Then file the lawsuit, she said. I'm done protecting him. When Heather called later that night, her voice was dripping with tears. Mom, please don't do this. Ethan made a mistake, but we'll pay you back. You can't send your only son to prison. Did you think about prison when you spent my money? Grace asked. We'll give you an IOU, Heather insisted. We just need time. It's invested, but it's growing. Grace sighed. Heather, you're an educated woman. Do you really believe that scam? Heather's tone hardened instantly. Fine. But if you go to court, we'll say it was a gift. You're old, Grace. Who's going to believe you? Grace hung up. The next day, Margaret brought over lasagna and rage in equal measure. Those two belong behind bars, she said. Grace stirred the sauce silently. Part of me still wants to give them one last chance. Grace, Margaret said firmly, gripping her shoulders, the son you raised is gone. What's left is a man who sees you as a bank account. Grace nodded slowly. Tomorrow, we go to the courthouse. The courthouse felt cold and cavernous. Grace sat between Margaret and Mr. Peterson, her fingers entwined tightly. At exactly 9, Ethan and Heather entered. Heather's stomach looked slightly rounded this time, perhaps real, perhaps not. Mom, Ethan said smoothly, we don't need to do this in public. Let's talk at home. Mr. Whitmore, Mr. Peterson interjected, you're being sued for misappropriating trust funds. Here's your copy. Ethan's face darkened. My own mother suing me. You do this to your pregnant daughter-in-law. Grace stood. Yesterday, Heather called the money a gift. Today, it's a misunderstanding. You can't have it both ways. Fine. Ethan snapped, pulling papers from his briefcase. Here's an itemized list of my mother's rent, food, and utilities for the 5 years she lived with us, $320,000. Let's settle it all. Grace looked at the papers and felt something inside her click into place. All right, she said quietly. Let's do that. She straightened her shoulders. For 5 years, I cooked 3 meals a day. A private chef earns $150 daily, $54,000 a year. For 5 years, that's $270,000. I clean twice a week at $200 per visit, that's another $100,000. Laundry and ironing, $1,000 a month, $60,000 total. So, Ethan, you owe me $430,000 for services rendered. Subtract your $320,000, and you still owe me $110,000, plus the $500,000 you stole. The courtroom fell silent. That's extortion, Ethan choked. No, Margaret said calmly. That's the market rate for unpaid labor. Ethan sank to his knees. Mom, please. I was wrong. It's all gone. Please don't ruin us. A clerk appeared. Both parties, the judge will see you now. In the mediation room, the judge reviewed the documents, her brow furrowed. Mr. Whitmore, you forged a signature. That's a felony. Mrs. Whitmore is within her rights to sue. Heather began to cry. Please, Your Honor, let us repay her. We'll do it in installments. Then sign an agreement, Grace said. Use your house as collateral. Ethan's face twisted. That's our home. Then I'll see you in court. Heather wiped her tears. We'll sign, she said firmly. Under the judge's supervision, they signed the repayment agreement. The house was collateral. If they defaulted, Grace could seize it. Outside the courthouse, Ethan's face was stone. Are you happy now? He hissed. No, Grace said softly. I'd be happy if my son were honest. That evening, exhaustion washed over her. She had won, but it didn't feel like victory. Margaret stopped by later, her smile bright. Grace, the community college wants you to teach a calligraphy course. You'd be perfect. Grace hesitated. Maybe. I'm not sure I'm ready. Margaret squeezed her hand. You are. This is your new life. The next morning, Grace brewed a pot of tea, sat on her balcony, and began to write again. The brush moved smoothly, steady, deliberate, free. Her phone rang. Mrs. Whitmore, a man's voice said. This is Mark Evans, principal at Lincoln Elementary. We'd love for you to mentor our new teachers. Would you consider it? Grace smiled softly. Yes, she said. I think I would. She stood, watching the morning light spill over her garden. After everything she'd lost, one truth remained: freedom, once reclaimed, was worth every tear it cost.